So picture this. You're talking to a colleague or, I don't know, maybe a close friend, and you're trying to explain something really important to you.
Oh, yeah. We have all been in that exact situation.
Right. And they're sitting right across from you, but you can just tell that they are only politely waiting for their turn to speak.
You can always see it in their eyes.
You know the exact look. Their eyes are just like slightly glazed over and they're nodding a little too rhythmically.
The bobblehead nod.
Exactly, the bobblehead. And you can practically hear them uh, drafting their own response in their head while you're still talking.
Because we all do it. I mean, the default mode of human interaction is often just, taking turns holding the microphone. We aren't actually engaging with what the other person is saying at all.
But then every once in a while, something completely different happens. You realize that the person across from you isn't just waiting.
They're actually with you.
Yeah, they're actively tracking your thoughts. They're genuinely interested in the architecture of your sentences and, where your ideas are actually leading.
And that is a very rare feeling.
It really is. And when that happens, when you really feel that profound, just undivided attention land squarely on you, it can literally stop you mid-sentence.
Oh, absolutely. It's a visceral reaction.
You might get a lump in your throat. You experience the sudden, almost nameless warmth just spreading through your chest.
Well, and most people don't actually have a vocabulary for that specific reaction, even though it is this intense physical shift.
Right. We just think, oh, that was a nice moment.
Exactly. We treat it as a fleeting moment. But there is an entire invisible architecture underneath that feeling.
And we're going to map out that exact architecture today. For this deep dive, we're pulling from this really fascinating piece of research detailed in Psychology Today by Dr. Guy Itchikoff.
It's a brilliant piece of work.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore the hidden emotional mechanics of conversation. Specifically, how the simple act of truly hearing someone can literally move humans to a state of love.
Which sounds like a big claim, but the science backs it up.
It does. So, okay, let's unpack this. We aren't just looking at, generic communication tips today.
Right. No 5 ways to be a better listener.
Exactly. This is an exploration of a biological mechanism. It's a latent superpower you already possess, but probably rarely deploy.
And going back to that nameless feeling we were just talking about, the scientific and cultural literature actually does have a name for that sudden warmth.
Wait, really? There's a specific term for it?
Yeah, there is. Alan Fiske is a psychological anthropologist. He drew on a Sanskrit term to describe it. The term is Kama Muta.
Kama Muta.
Right.
Sure.
And it translates beautifully and quite literally to being moved by love.
Okay, but the article makes a really specific point to clarify that this is not inherently romantic love, right?
Oh, far from it. Kama Muta is the term used to describe a sudden, sharp intensification of any social bond.
Any bond at all.
Any bond. It is the exact moment when you realize, completely out of the blue, that someone genuinely cares about your inner experience.
Wow.
It's the sensation of feeling, all at once, just much less alone in the world. And it manifests physically, like we said. You get goosebumps.
Yeah, the chills.
Right. You might feel a sudden instinctual urge to pull the person closer to you. You might even tear up.
See, here's where it gets really interesting for me, because this kind of contradicts how we usually think about emotional connection.
How so?
Well, when I think about a sudden, massive intensification of a social bond, my mind immediately goes to, grand gestures.
Oh, sure. Like a movie scene.
Exactly. I equate it with a movie scene airport reunion. Two people running through the terminal, sweeping music, they're dropping their luggage.
The whole Hollywood treatment.
Yeah. It's like stepping out of a freezing winter night directly into a heated room. It's this massive, dramatic shift in temperature.
Right.
So my question is, can that same level of intensity really be triggered just by someone quietly paying attention to you across a coffee table?
It can.
Yeah.
But to understand the intensity of that shift, you have to look at the baseline of the human condition.
Okay, what do you mean by baseline?
Well, we walk around most of the day in a state of mild chronic isolation.
Oh, wow. That's a little bleak, but yeah, I get it.
It is, but it's true. We are locked inside our own heads, we're managing our own anxieties, and we assume no one really understands our specific internal weather.
Right. We're all just on our own little islands.
Exactly. So when someone genuinely listens to you, and I mean not just processing the auditory input, but tracking the underlying emotion and meaning, it violently disrupts that baseline of isolation.
Ah, It's the contrast, the sudden jump from feeling totally unseen to entirely seen.
Yes. The jump is so steep and so sudden that your nervous system reacts exactly as it would to a grand gesture.
So the body doesn't know the difference.
Not at all. Think of the human nervous system as this oversensitive smoke detector. It is constantly scanning the environment for social threats.
Because what, historically speaking, social rejection meant you were kicked out of the tribe.
Yes, exactly. From an evolutionary standpoint, exile meant death.
Mhm.
So when a person sits across from you and provide high-quality attention, they're essentially walking over to that smoke detector and taking the battery out.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. The threat detection systems just power down.
They do. And the relief of that sudden safety floods your body. That warmth, the goosebumps, the Kama Muta, it's literally your biology registering a profound shift from isolation to absolute safety.
That is wild. And Dr. Chekhov's team, they didn't just theorize about this biological shift, right? They actually wanted to see if it could be isolated and quantified in a lab.
Right, they wanted hard data.
Yeah.
So they ran 3 separate studies to test the boundaries of Kama Muta.
And they started with imagined conversations.
Yeah, imagine conversations, then they had participants recall past interactions, and then finally they moved to live Zoom exchanges.
Which is an incredibly high hurdle because, I mean, let's be honest, Zoom is usually where emotional connection goes to die.
It really is. It's so exhausting.
Yeah. It's laggy. You're constantly distracted by the video of your own face. The audio clips out if you try to speak at the same time.
Yeah, it's not a natural environment for human bonding at all.
Not at all. And the parameters they set for this were really tight. It was just 10 minutes of conversation over video between total strangers.
Right. And in those 10 minutes, they instructed the listeners to employ specific subverbal behaviors.
So they weren't just told, like, hey, be a nice person.
No, it was highly mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
They had to maintain soft eye contact, avoid interrupting entirely, pause for a few seconds after the speaker finished before even responding.
Which is so hard to do.
It's incredibly hard. And they had to suspend their own conversational agenda. They could only ask questions to explore the speaker's thoughts, not to pivot to their own stories.
And within that short 10-minute window, the data showed that these total strangers actually crossed the threshold into Kama Muta.
Yes, they did.
The speakers reported feeling moved. They felt this communal closeness. They felt that physical warmth we described earlier.
Over a laggy Zoom call?
Right. 10 minutes of applied technique completely dismantled the idea that deep connection requires, years of shared history.
It's amazing. But the data revealed a secondary phenomenon that honestly shifted the entire paradigm of the research.
Oh, right, the part about the listeners.
Yes, the emotional warmth, the goosebumps, that feeling of being moved by love, it was not confined to the person speaking. The listeners reported experiencing the exact same levels of Kama Muta.
Okay, wait, hold on. I need to push back on this. Because if I am the one listening, I am doing all the heavy emotional lifting.
A lot of work, yeah.
I'm suppressing my natural urge to talk. I am forcing myself to focus entirely on a stranger's inner life instead of my own. Why on earth am I getting the same emotional reward as the person who is soaking up the spotlight and having their existence validated?
It's a great question. And it comes back to the subverbal mechanics we just talked about.
The eye contact and the pausing.
Exactly. When you engage in that level of high-quality listening, you are sending a continuous subconscious signal to other person's amygdala. You are proving, moment by moment, that they are safe and worth attending to.
So I'm basically building the environment for them.
You are actively constructing a pocket of absolute safety. And when the speaker's nervous system registers that safety, they relax.
You can probably see it happen physically.
You can. Their posture shifts, their vocal tone drops, they become much more authentic and vulnerable. And as the listener, you are sitting in the front row of that transformation.
Right.
You get to watch another human being drop their armor, and you know you are the architect of that shift.
That makes sense. But why does that give me goosebumps?
Right. Because humans are deeply wired for co-regulation. Because of mirror neurons in the brain, when we observe someone else entering a state of deep, relaxed safety, our own nervous system mirrors that exact state.
Wow, so it's a biological feedback loop. By giving the gift of safety, I am creating an environment where my own nervous system is basically forced to relax too.
You're participating in a shared state of vulnerability. Evolutionary biology dictates that tribal survival depends on reciprocal vulnerability.
So we sync up.
We do. When two nervous systems sync up in a state of safety, the brain releases oxytocin and endorphins for both parties. You aren't just performing a chore for the speaker, you are triggering a shared emotional event.
And that is why the relational bond jumps for the listener just as intensely as it does for the speaker.
Exactly.
Okay, so if this is a biological hack that works in 10 minutes between total strangers, it raises the question of what happens when you stretch that timeline out.
Right, taking it out of the lab.
Yeah, the research moves from the laboratory into an environment where vulnerability is typically viewed as a massive liability. They ran 4 field studies focusing on organizational emotional culture, basically the workplace.
And scaling this mechanism up changes the conversation entirely. You are no longer just looking at a momentary feeling, you are looking at the foundational architecture of an entire culture.
Right, so in these field studies, the researchers took employees and gave them listening training and then tracked the outcomes over time.
And the results were really striking.
They were. Following this training, employees began perceiving their workplace as having a culture of companionate love.
Which is a strong term for an office.
It is. According to the text, companionate love in an organizational context is characterized by care, tenderness, and a pervasive sense that your colleagues actually notice how you are doing on a day-to-day basis.
And it's important to note, the training wasn't about overhauling the whole corporate structure.
Right, they didn't change the management hierarchy.
No, it was just about changing default conversational habits. Employees were trained to track stress signals in their coworkers, to reflect back meaning before offering solutions, and to monitor their own physical posture during routine interactions.
And the measurable outcomes were just staggering. They saw greater employee well-being, higher resilience during stressful periods, stronger commitment to the organization, and significantly more cooperation across departments.
It fundamentally changed how the business is operated.
It did. The environment people perceived themselves to be in tracked almost perfectly with how much genuine listening was happening in the hallways and on conference calls.
It's a direct correlation.
But, okay, I have to play the skeptic here for a second. Because companionate love in the office honestly sounds like a mandatory corporate HR retreat nightmare.
Oh, for sure. It sounds like a trap.
Right. It evokes images of team-building exercises with trust falls and forced sharing circles while you're eating, like, stale conference room pastries.
Right, the absolute worst kind of mandatory fun.
Exactly. So how do we distinguish between the genuine involuntary flash of Kama Muta we discussed in the Zoom study and this companionate love when people are just trying to get through a Tuesday morning status meeting without losing their minds?
It is so easy to be cynical about emotional terminology in a corporate setting, but the text draws a clear mechanical synthesis between the two concepts so we don't conflate them with HR buzzwords.
Okay, lay it out for me.
Kama Muta is a momentary flash. It is a spark. Companionate love is the slow-grown culture. It is the fire that the sparks eventually start.
Ah, so the spark and the fire rely on the exact same fuel.
The engine for both is identical. It is that continuous subverbal signal that a person's inner life and their stress actually matter.
Right.
In a single 10-minute conversation, that signal creates a steep jump in connection Kama Muta. But when you take that exact same signal and repeat it day after day across dozens of routine conversations between multiple colleagues, over months and months it accumulates.
It's a difference between a sudden monsoon and a steady year-long irrigation system.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
The water is exactly the same, right? It is genuine, high-quality attention, but one washes over you all at once in a massive flood of emotion, and the other, slowly, almost imperceptibly, turns a barren office environment into a place where people can actually thrive.
Exactly. The daily, seemingly mundane act of listening is the steady drip in that irrigation system. You don't need trust falls or forced vulnerability sessions.
No stale pastries required.
None at all. You just need a consistent baseline where people feel their day-to-day existence is noticed and validated by the people around them.
And that accumulation of micro-validations builds a structural foundation of trust.
And the researchers reasonably categorize that accumulated trust as a culture of companionate love.
Which makes sense. But this requires us to set some firm boundaries on the research, though, because we are throwing around the word love a lot today.
We are?
We have the sudden Kama Muta kind and the slow-grown companionate kind. And we're heavily linking both to the act of listening. But the article explicitly states a critical caveat, which is that listening is not love.
Right. We have to be meticulous about separating the mechanism from the outcome. Listening does not automatically equal love.
And the proof the author offers is just simple and undeniable. You can listen incredibly carefully to an enemy.
Oh, absolutely.
You can sit across from someone you actively despise and pay profound attention to their words, their tone, and their subtext,
Dude,
simply to understand their strategy.
you're gathering intel, basically.
Exactly. And on the flip side, you can deeply, fundamentally love a family member that you haven't spoken to or listened to in over a decade. The two concepts exist entirely independently.
Right. If we break down the psychological equation presented in the research, the sequence operates entirely on causality.
Okay, what's the equation?
Genuine attention creates safety. Safety creates vulnerability. And vulnerability opens the door to real connection.
So listening is essentially the soil, not the plant itself.
That's a great way to look at it.
You can have the most nutrient-dense soil in the world, but it doesn't guarantee a specific flower is going to grow. It doesn't guarantee you're going to fall in love or become best friends or even like the person.
Right.
But it is the most efficient, biologically reliable way to create the exact conditions where connection can take root.
And that equation, attention leading to safety, leading to vulnerability, is a hard biological reality. When you provide genuine attention, you are physically altering the emotional chemistry of the space between two people. You are hacking the threat detection system.
Which brings this entirely out of the laboratory and directly into your daily life.
Yes, the practical application.
Think about the conversations you are going to have today. The meetings, the phone calls, the quick chats in the kitchen.
There are dozens of them.
Right. The next time you find yourself silently composing your clever rebuttal, or your funny anecdote, or even just your grocery list while someone else is still talking, pause.
It is an incredibly difficult habit to break, though, because it is our default defensive posture. We want to be ready to assert our own existence the second the other person takes a breath.
But you shouldn't pause just to be polite. You shouldn't do it because it's good etiquette or because you want to be known as a good conversationalist.
No, the stakes are higher than that.
You should do it because, based on the biological mechanics we've mapped out today, you might end up being the one who is moved. By simply dismantling your own conversational agenda, you get to experience that sudden warmth. You get the spark of Kama Muta.
The research clearly demonstrates that human nervous systems inherently crave the safety and connection triggered by being truly heard. It is a biological imperative for co-regulation.
We physically need it.
We do.
Uh-huh.
But if our default mode in everyday conversation is just waiting for our turn to speak, we really have to ask ourselves something. Are we unwittingly starving our own nervous systems of this warmth?
That is a heavy thought.
It is. We wander through our days feeling isolated, managing our baseline anxiety, yet we're constantly interacting with other people. How many moments of Kama Muta, how many sudden beautiful jumps in connection are you leaving on the table every single day simply because you are too busy drafting your next sentence?
Wow. The next time you are sitting across from someone, remember the architecture underneath the words. You aren't just holding a microphone, you are standing at the thermostat. You have the mechanical power to turn a freezing winter night into a heated room just by deciding to actually listen.